Troy Martinez Fisher. I'm a state representative from San Antonio. I'm also chairman of the House Democratic Caucus. What's really interesting about today in this gathering is that I'm here at the Republican convention and Governor Abbott is not. You know how bad things are in the Republican Party when the governor will choose to zoom it in, then to come down for an hour to tell his party that they're out of control. You know things are bad when Pope Francis speaks out on the inhumanity of Ken Paxton and Republican border policies. You know things are that bad. And if you want to get a flavor of the cruelty campaign that continues to exist over these last couple of days, we've now seen proposed bans on IVF. We've seen more voter suppression. We've seen more voucher scams. And we've seen Democrats, which really is coded language for people of color, to not have a role in the leadership halls of Austin. And heaven forbid should they pass laws from the House to the Senate. According to Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, those bills would go in the trash in the Senate. I don't think that's what it's about. It's pretty clear to me that this election is a referendum on extremism versus freedom. Freedom to choose, freedom to love, and the freedom to participate in democracy. And that's not what's happening inside these buildings. And for Republicans to come to San Antonio to convene at the Henry B. Gonzalez Convention Center, a champion of the poor, a champion of the immigrant, a champion of Latinos and working class throughout this state. I know that Henry B. is turning in his grave right now. We believe very strongly that silence is acquiescence. Texas Democrats, San Antonio Democrats, San Antonio leaders will not be silent when Republicans come to this town with their cruelty, with their rhetoric, with their inflammatory and offensive language, and that is why we're here today. We've got a good collection of speakers who will share that with you in their own perspectives. Thank you for being here, and let me turn this over to our good friend, our champion, and a leader for San Antonio and our community, Congressman Joaquin Caucus.
Good to see everybody. I'm Joaquin Caucus. I'm very proud to represent my hometown of San Antonio in the U.S. House of Representatives. And before we get started, I wanted to take just a moment to remember the lives that were lost. 19 children and teachers in Uvalde, Texas. I'll speak to that a little more in just a second. But as the Republicans convene, the Texas Republicans convene in San Antonio today, I hope you'll remember what Democrats stand for. Freedom, democracy, and opportunity. Republicans, on the other hand, have increasingly stood for extremism, for corruption, for incompetence, and cruelty. After the shooting in Uvalde, just like the other mass shootings, what did Republican state leaders do to help the people of Texas? Absolutely nothing. After the grid failed, despite multiple warnings that it might, people froze to death in Texas. What did Republican state leaders do? Nothing. Increasingly, they're taking away people's freedoms in Texas. They're starving our public schools. When somebody's kid needs to go to the doctor but they can't afford it, they get nothing. When women want to make the most intimate and personal decisions about their bodies, when they need to get an abortion, even when their life is threatened, Republicans don't let them make those decisions. They've taken away that freedom. They banned abortion in the state of Texas. The Attorney General, in fact, wants to arrest some of these women and their doctors. This is a party of extremism that does nothing for the people of Texas. It's consumed by fighting among its state leaders and its delegation. I served with 2 Republicans in the congressional delegation, folks that I work with. And I want to read you their words that describe their colleagues who have convened here today. one of my Republican colleagues in the delegation said, quote, "Come explain to me one meaningful thing the Republican majority has done." He was speaking about his colleagues in Congress. That was not a Democrat complaining about Republicans. That was not partisanship. That was a Republican from San Antonio talking about his own Republican colleagues in the U.S. Congress. My other Republican colleague in the delegation said that he serves with scumbags and Klansmen. That's who he believes, as a Republican member of Congress, makes up, at least partly makes up, some of the Republican members of Congress in the House of Representatives. So the people of Texas have a choice this November, and the people of this country have a choice: to follow the MAGA extremist Republicans who are here today, or to take a different path, one that respects freedom, that respects democracy, believes that one person should get one vote and that vote should count, and believes in opportunity for all Texans and all Americans. Or we can descend further into this chaos and madness and ugliness and danger. That's what they're doing here today. With that, I'd like to turn it over to State Representative Vicki Goodwin.
I'm going to give this a shot. I'm State Representative Vicki Goodwin from the Austin area. Okay, maybe not. Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. As the Republicans meet for their state convention today, I have some reminders for them. I want to remind the Republicans that people are suffering as a result of their anti-abortion laws. While Democrats have repeatedly fought for reproductive freedom, Republicans in Texas have taken that freedom away. As a result of the current Texas law, women who want to have children but have complications during pregnancy have been harmed. Those women have filed lawsuits against the state, taking time and money and not changing the fact that they weren't able to get the medical care they needed because of uncaring lawmakers. Even non-viable pregnancies have to be carried to term, causing untold anguish. Can you imagine? Women who want to have babies but have complications are being put at risk. I want to remind the Republicans that people are fed up as a result of their anti-abortion laws. Texans want to have a say in the matter. Texans want to vote and make the decision of whether a woman and her doctor make the medical decisions or whether the government makes medical decisions for us. Look at all the states where people have said there should be some options for abortion: Kansas, Michigan, Vermont, and California. All people should have the freedom to make their own medical decisions. I filed a bill to allow people of Texas a vote on a constitutional amendment allowing women and their doctors to make this decision, as opposed to the government making the decision for us. And I'm currently working on a bill that would allow citizen-led referendums in Texas, which are not currently allowed. This would ensure the will of the people is reflected in our laws. I want to remind Republicans that after a baby is born, there are many needs. That baby needs a doctor and healthcare system, food and shelter, love and attention. If you are truly pro-life, you will want to ensure that the safety nets created by compassionate policymakers remain in place to ensure the well-being of the baby in all of his or her stages of life. We have children and adults who have been removed from the Medicaid rolls and people who were never able to receive Medicaid even when the need existed. Governor Abbott and state leaders have not allowed for Medicaid expansion, which would ensure lower-income people could access the health care they need to lead productive lives. I want to remind the Republicans that every day women are raped. The Republicans' anti-abortion laws mean that victims of rape or incest must carry their fetuses through a 9-month pregnancy, a daily reminder of the rape they endured. Remember when Governor Abbott said he would remove all the rapists from the streets of Texas? Well, Governor Abbott did not fulfill his promise. He did not remove all the rapists from the streets of Texas. In fact, thousands of women who were raped have ended up pregnant in Texas, having to carry those pregnancies to term and give birth to their rapist babies. When I was 18, I was raped. I was lucky in that I did not become pregnant, but had I was in no mental condition to carry a pregnancy through. However, it wasn't just luck that kept me from getting pregnant at that time. I was on birth control. If the Republicans have their way, will they continue down a dangerous path of removing the ability for women to control when and with whom they have a family? I want to tell the Republicans something they may not be hearing. Listen carefully. Republicans have not taken away women's choice. What Republicans have done is they have taken away the choice of having a safe, legal abortion. That was a choice I could have made back in 1985. Today, the choices for women who are raped are: 1, travel to a state where abortions are safe and legal; 2, self-induce an abortion, which risks her life; or 3, carry an unwanted fetus for 9 months and give birth to a child that needs love without regret. Today, the choices are ones that lead to harm, trauma, and even death. Finally, I want to remind Republicans that when people are suffering, when they are fed up, when they are pushed to their limits, they will vote. They will vote for Democrats because we are the ones who want to give them the freedom to choose the medical care they need and the freedom for doctors to give the best care to their patients. The people of Texas know their vote is their power. I will now turn it over to State Representative Jean Wu.
Hi, my name is Jean Wu. I'm the State Representative for House District 137, which is in Southwest Houston. You know, Vicki talked about policy. I'm here to talk about our soul. Because after El Paso, when we had a shooter mass murder our own Texans, our fellow Texans, we said, please, you need to stop this kind of rhetoric, stop the language that's inspiring these people. They did not. The people in this building, after Allen, Texas, we said, please cut the white supremacist rhetoric out. Stop it. Your actions drive violence in our communities. They did not. They not only kept the language of white supremacists, they started adding language of the actual Nazis. And today we have a presidential candidate who is openly saying we need to round people up. We need to round people up by force because of who they are, because of the way they were born, and because of where they were born. They have adopted white supremacist symbols across the nation. We had a speaker in this building talking about the forced sterilization of minorities. Actual Nazi rhetoric. We have people talking about how slavery wasn't that bad, was it? It wasn't really that bad. We have people talking about how segregation was good. We need to return to it. We have Attorney General Ken Paxton in this very building talking directly about the Great Replacement Theory, an actual documented white supremacist Nazi talking point. And he talks about it as if, oh, the sky's blue. We had the leaders of this party, of the Republican Party, who sat down for 6 hours to meet with Nick Fuentes, a self-avowed neo-Nazi, a white supremacist. This is what the Texas GOP has become. And look at what they've done, and look at what they want to do. We passed SB 4, multiple versions of SB 4, who provide law enforcement with unconstitutional powers. Powers that directly defy the founding laws of our nation. They don't care. We have them trying to pass alien land laws that were passed over 100 years ago and ruled unconstitutional then, to say that Asian Americans and other people that they don't like, that they hate, cannot buy property, cannot own a home, cannot even buy stupid farmland, cannot buy a 3-acre soybean field. Because look at them. They look different. They speak different. They eat different foods. They can't be one of us. You have the Republican Party of Texas banning books, banning discussion about civil rights, about diversity, about inclusion, about equity. I'm here today as a warning to all immigrant communities, to all minority communities, and to even Republicans who are in this building who still have an ounce of shame left. 80 years ago, our country sacrificed American lives to defeat the Nazis, to defeat the policies that they believed in, to defeat the evil they spread around the world. And today, we are here to say we will stand up to the same people. We will stand up against the same ideas, the same principles. We will stand up against racism. We will stand up against hate. Because those are not Texas values. And once again, 80 years later, if it's necessary, we will defeat the Nazis again.
Thank you. Just for the benefit of the live stream, we will reiterate what we need is leadership. Things are really bad in the Republican Party when the governor of Texas will not drive an hour south. He'd rather zoom it in than be here. A United States senator would walk the halls but not take the stage to fight back on this inflammatory rhetoric. It is the smallest minds making the loudest noise. Texans are suffering in the process. This election is about freedom versus extremism, the freedom to choose, the freedom to love, and the freedom to participate in our democracy. That's not what's occurring here. And for a building named after the late Congressman Henry B. Gonzalez, a champion of the poor, a champion of the civil rights, a champion of the immigrant, he would not let that stand under his watch. We will not let that stand under our watch. And that is why we are here today, to protest and object and to not be a silent voice and do the opposite of what Governor Abbott's doing. We will show up and we will speak out and we will push back when we see things are wrong, when we see there's an injustice. And that's why we're here today. Let me pass it on to Congressman Castro, and then we will close with a 1-minute reminder of what this weekend's really about.
Well, you heard from our 3 state representatives about the extremism that I spoke about, whether it's on taking away freedom, taking away women's freedom and their right to choose, literally dictating the decisions that they're going to make and their families are going to make, threatening to arrest them and their doctors, taking away the ability of people to go to school and read certain books, literally banning books. This Republican state government continues to take away freedom after freedom. And the people of Texas have a choice, whether they're going to continue to go along with that extremism or whether they're going to take a different path. We offer that different path. Thank you.
Like I said, we will close with some of the most important issues and why this weekend matters and why we do what we do. Let me bring up Adrian Reyna from the American Federation of Teachers San Antonio Alliance.
Thank you, Representative. Good morning. My name is Adrian Reyna. I am a 3rd-generation public educator with the privilege of teaching in the San Antonio Independent School District and serving as the Executive Vice President of the San Antonio Alliance of Teachers and Support Personnel, which is the democratically elected union of SAISD and the largest labor union in Bexar County. It is an honor to be here with so many leaders and allies who not only can envision the world that we all deserve, but who are working and fighting tirelessly to create it. Texas public schools, their students, Their school workers and their communities continue to endure an unprecedented assault from Governor Abbott, Republicans, and big money special interest groups. And that's why we fight, because we have to, because our kids and our communities deserve it. We fight because Democrats know that our public schools are the foundation of a functioning democracy, that they have the power to lift up, to liberate, and to transform young people and our communities. Our public schools are where students learn who they are, where they come from, and the power that they have in the world, especially when they work together. This is precisely what Governor Abbott and the billionaires fear the most. And that's what's behind their motivation to defund and dismantle public education in Texas. Texas continually ranks in the bottom 10 states for per pupil funding, coming in at just over $3,000 less per student than the national average. That means that our students and our school workers are being asked to do more than ever, while our state legislature once again neglects its constitutional duty to support and maintain a system of free public schools. And to be clear, we have the money. Our state surplus for this budget biennium, just the extra money we have as a state, was larger than the entire budgets of 24 other states. Despite this $33 billion surplus this past session, our legislature, our Republican-controlled and led legislature, failed to invest any of it in the over 5 million students sitting in our public schools, or the school workers that serve them. In fact, despite the record-breaking state budget, Texas public school workers did not receive a raise this session. Texans deserve a legislature that fully and equitably funds all public schools. Our students deserve fully resourced classrooms with certified teachers and access to counselors and social workers, as Texas also ranks last in children's access to mental health services. Our public school workers, from custodial and nutritional staff to bus drivers to teachers to those counselors and social workers, they all deserve wages that reflect our dignity and our contributions to our communities. But instead, we have a Republican-controlled legislature that crafted a budget devoid of any meaningful investment in public schools, and a Republican governor who promises endless special sessions and is bringing in millions of dollars from out of the state just to fight for a voucher plan that will siphon millions of dollars away from our Texas public schools and into religious and private institutions. Governor Abbott continues to threaten students, families, and public school workers by holding much-needed investments in public education hostage for his voucher scam. And while we desperately want to have a conversation about increasing school funding and worker salaries, let us be very clear. There is no amount of money worth vouchers and the destruction of our democratically run and publicly accountable neighborhood schools. And this is just the tip of the iceberg of why we fight. It's no surprise that the same state leaders pushing vouchers are the same state leaders pushing book bans, whitewashed assimilationist curricula, and anti-LGBTQIA+ policies. The fight against privatization is the fight for inclusion. What we need are adequate and accurate resources, not 10 Commandments posters. What we need are common sense gun laws and certified mental health professionals, not chaplains acting as school counselors or thoughts and prayers. And what we need is to lift up and embrace all histories and identities and not allow anyone to be erased or vilified for who they are. So let us call those policies what they are: Christian nationalist, racist, trans and homophobic, and they threaten to dehumanize and diminish and devalue the students, the families, and the school workers in our public schools. Public schools that belong to the people of Texas. Public schools that should manifest the will of the people of Texas. And since Uvalde 2 years ago today, we have continually heard the cries from our students, from our families, and our school workers to stop the bloodshed, to protect our schools. We all deserve to feel safe when we work and learn. But despite overwhelming bipartisan support from Texans across this state, again, our Republican majority legislature failed to produce any significant legislation to turn the tide of gun violence in Texas. And the bottom line is we cannot and we will not have school safety until our state laws prioritize people, kids, over guns, period. So we are all here because we understand what happens at both the Texas Capitol and in Washington, D.C. has real consequences for our communities. Regrettably, decisions at every level of government have contributed to a perfect storm in the district that I love and call home, SAISD. As a result of declining student enrollment due to aggressive expansion of charter schools, another consequence of state legislation, the lack of affordable housing in the urban core, and the chronic underfunding of public schools in Greg Abbott's Texas, SAISD leadership chose to close 15 of our schools. Schools that have served their neighborhoods for decades, for generations, and are the beating hearts of their communities. Our union, alongside our partners in the Schools Our Students Deserve Coalition, have been organizing with parents, students, and community members to ensure that the school closure process was anchored in shared, democratic decision-making that follows our core tenet. Nothing about us without us. And that's why we fight. Because we have to. For our students, for our public schools, for our future. So as we prepare for November and next session, in a state and at a time when the fight before us looms large, I'm reminded of Emma Tenayuca. She's an incredible labor leader, freedom fighter, and graduate of an SAISD school. She joined the Fink cigar workers strike in 1932 at the age of 16. And when asked if she was afraid of going to jail or being arrested, she said, "I never thought in terms of fear. I think if I did, I would have stayed home. I thought in terms of justice." So thank you to everyone here today. Thank you to the House Democratic Caucus, and thank you to the millions of Texans across this great state who continue to fight, never in terms of fear, but always in terms of justice. Thank you. And now I'm going to turn it over to Representative Martinez.
Thank you. As we close it out, as we prepare for Memorial Day weekend, we want to close it out with one of our soldiers, Representative Josie Garcia.
Thank you all so much for being here. As we're on the cusp of Memorial Day weekend, I think it's very important that we understand what it is that we're celebrating this weekend. Memorial Day isn't a time where we get cool discounts at Starbucks and when we're able to have barbecues and parades. Memorial Day is a day that we remember those who lost their lives for us and our country and our freedom. Instead of celebrating the lives of those that have been lost, we find ourselves in a fight over personality politics. Of my 150 colleagues in the Texas House of Representatives, there's but a little over a dozen of us, with me being the first woman veteran ever to serve in the Texas House of Representatives. So that's telling you that we are not represented well. And when we tout the title of Military City USA, and we tout the title of being Military State USA, we are refusing to protect and defend Texans from things that we have the ability to protect and defend them from, whether it to be fund our schools equitably, whether it be the hundreds of thousands of people who are suffering from PTSD and do not have access to medications and alternate forms of therapies, as we're on the cusp of the very people who built our nation being criminalized. We need to come together as Texans in a nonpartisan fashion, because as military, we don't claim red or blue. We claim red, white, and blue. And we're at a time where we're done with the playing around. We want to honor Military City USA. We want to honor the sacrifices of our veterans by protecting and defending Texans. This is a call to action. The issues that we fight for are not partisan issues. They are not Democratic issues. They are American issues, and people died for this right. Head to the polls, get engaged, and call your representatives. Call the people who are inside this building who are ignoring protecting Texans first.
That concludes our prepared remarks. If you have questions for Representative Wu, Representative Goodwin, or myself, we can take one or two now, or we can do one-on-ones.
Right behind you in this building, Republicans in Texas are about to choose their next state party chair. Do you have a preferred state party chair for the Texas GOP?
You know, that's a tall order. I would say that the minimum requirements to be the chair of the GOP is to have humanity, have compassion, and have empathy for your fellow Texans. All of that remains to be seen.
Speaker Dave Phelan's gotten a lot of, it's been attacked over and over here, specifically about the issue of putting Democrats in leadership positions in the House. I was hoping you could maybe talk about how that, what that brings to the legislative process.
And that's a question for Speaker Phelan, not us.
What about just being in as Democrats being in leadership positions? What does that do?
we'll discuss that when that time comes. Anybody else?
What's the most concerning thing you're hearing about what's going on in there?
How much time you got? I mean, look, let's not beat around the bush on this, right? We know what generally Americans and Texans support and don't support. The people in this building literally are going and pushing an agenda that nobody outside of even just their primary voters support. These idea of defunding schools, of not paying our teachers, the public is wildly against that. The public overwhelmingly wants us to use our surplus to pay for teachers, pay for schools, and do better. The public overwhelmingly wants us to have health care. The public overwhelmingly wants us to not elect Nazis. The public overwhelmingly wants us to have a reasonable and balanced discussion about race and ethnicity and all the things that makes America great. But they're all against it. This is the dying remnants of the American GOP struggling to survive by bringing on the most extreme, the most violent, the most angry, and the most out of touch people they can possibly find. Literally, you have Attorney General Ken Paxton talking about the Great Replacement Theory, a well-known and well-documented Nazi propaganda piece. This is not hyperbole. This is not exaggeration. This is not fear-mongering. The people in here, they're discussing things that even their own membership is like, wait. Are we sure we want to do this? They're talking about banning IVF, while Republicans around the nation are scrambling to defend IVF because they know how bad it looks to the American people. They almost lost the vote. IVF, almost by a hair, almost lost the vote. Because that's how extreme they are. We're not talking about the Republican Party of 10 years ago. We're not talking even about the Republican Party of 5 years ago. The Texas GOP, as we knew it under Rick Perry, that's long dead. It is long dead. The people who are still willing and able to stand up and say, no, what is important to me is my community, is my state, is my nation. Those people are being primaried out right now. Look at their turnout this year. Look at their turnout. On a presidential year, their turnout is about as low as it's ever been. Because even though this is a hardcore Republican gathering, there are still hardcore Republicans who say, I can't do this. It's too much. It's beyond the pale. We cannot go this extreme. I cannot be a part of this anymore. I've met with Republican after Republican who have quietly come to me saying, like, I can't do this anymore. It's too extreme, especially Asians, especially immigrants, who say the white supremacist rhetoric, the anti-immigrant rhetoric, the extremist rhetoric, we thought it was a joke. But then those people started taking power. This is for real. Americans, Texans, whoever you are, if you believe in truth, justice, and American way, you better get off your ass and fight. Because the people who want to take that away, people who are openly championing fascism and authoritarianism and white supremacy are on stage.
I hope you got that answer. Last question, then we'll do one-on-ones.
As a representative for San Antonio, how upsetting is it to have this conference happening in your city?
Well, it's not upsetting for me as a representative from San Antonio. I think it's a bad mark for our state. And that's why it's important that we assemble and we provide the perspective that we think fits the majority of Texans' views. The last time I checked, it's pretty easy to get a hotel this weekend because this convention is underwhelming. And it's underwhelming for a reason. Those values are out of step with mainstream Texans, and there's time for a change. and that's why we're here. Thanks for your questions. We'll do one-on-ones next.